Welcome to HistOracle, where we look and see into the past, to the events that shape our future. Let us begin. The year was 1937. John Steinbeck's short story, The Chrysanthemum, appeared in the edition of Harper's Magazine. His book of Mice and Men was published that year. Franklin D. Roosevelt had just been re-elected president. The country was recovering from the Great Depression. Unions were developing. And child labor in manufacturing was abolished. Living in the shadows of the 1929 Great Depression was the 1937 Recession. It was the Yankees' third series win over the Giants. The average cost for a house was $4,000. The average wage was $1,800 a year. The cost of a gallon of gas was 10 cents. A gallon of milk was 10 cents. The average rent of a house was $26 a month. A loaf of bread was 9 cents. The average price of a new car was $760. A tuition at Harvard was $420 a year. A movie ticket was 25 cents. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was a box office hit. It was the year of the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge. And Howard Hughes breaks his own transcontinental flight record. The year they call off the search for Amelia Earhart. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, in Frankfurt, Germany, the crew and ground crew prepare for takeoff. The Hindenburg. It was one of the greatest attractions of its day. It is still one of the largest flying vessels ever made in our time. Oh, the humanity! These were the words used to describe the downing of the Hindenburg airship in New Jersey on May 6, 1937, by Herbert Morrison. Morrison's dramatic narration of the newsreel of the Hindenburg's disaster is probably the public's most enduring memory of the crash. Perhaps the most misunderstood, Morrison's commentary was not made for a newsreel, and theater audiences in 1937 never experienced his words and the film together. Morrison was a radio reporter, and his words were never paired with the film footage until decades later. This one event marked the beginning of the end of airship travel.
Sails over New York. These pictures, made from a Pathé News plane less than 4 hours before the tragedy, show the world's largest airship heading for Lakehurst, New Jersey. Over Newark's famous auto skyway, the airship was hailed by thousands who little dreamed it was their final glimpse of the Hindenburg.
In the early 1900s, rigid airships, also known as dirigibles or Zeppelins, named after the German inventor Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin. In its day, it was hailed as the transportation of the future. At an altitude of 650 feet, the Hindenburg made its final approach to the Lakehurst Naval Air Station. Claims it was as big as the Titanic. And the prize of Nazi Germany. The skies were dominated by airships, the most famous which was the Hindenburg LZ-129. The Hindenburg was a 803-foot long conventional Zeppelin that had a maximum speed of 84 miles an hour and had a cruising speed of 76 miles per hour. The Hindenburg had a beryllium structure. Elements of the entire giant scaffolding are small struts, under 1 foot long and approximately 1.5 inches wide. Punched out of beryllium to save weight, they are perforated so they will not lose its strength, and for the modern Zeppelin, around 400,000 struts are required. Incorporating 15 Ferris wheel-like main ring bulkheads along its length, with 15 cotton gas bags fitted between them. The bulkheads were placed to each other by longitudinal girders placed around their circumferences, as shown in this model. Holes are precisely drilled to accommodate the girders that will be attached by hand with rivets. So-called profiles are assembled in nitroethane with the help of small struts to form triangular girders, which are extremely light and extremely stable. Statisticians have calculated that all the triangular beams of the airship lined up would result in a length of 14 miles. Each individual beam is weighed precisely. This is the master ring. It is used as a form. The engineers are able to trace the contours of the master ring. Each triangular girder is fitted to the master ring. Once fitted, it is then moved for final assembly. Now the individual rings are carefully fitted together. Once it's assembled and inspected, a crane is used to lift it in position. The airship's outer protective skin material was made of cotton and a mixture of reflective materials painted on it. This is to protect the gas bags from within, from both radiation to ultraviolet waves, which would cause damage to the bags, and what the infrared would do would cause the bags to overheat. The gas cells were made by a new method, pioneered by Goodyear, using multiple layers of gelatinized latex rather than the previous gold beater skins. The main power plant was a Benz 16-cylinder diesel engine. The Daimler-Benz DB602, originally known as the Daimler-Benz LOF6, was a German diesel cycle aero engine, designed and built in the early 1930s. It was a liquid-cooled upright V16 and powered the two Hindenburg-class airships. It was roughly the same displacement and weight of the Beardmore Tornado, which was used in the ill-fated R-101, but has twice the power of the Tornado, showing the Daimler-Benz superior knowledge regarding the diesel engine's construction. Cooking aboard the Hindenburg presented a unique set of challenges. Of course, when dealing with an enormous balloon full of highly flammable gas, open flame was strictly forbidden. The galley of the ship was fully electric, from stoves to ovens. A head chef had a team of 5 assistants to help with all the duties of serving 3 meals a day to a hungry crew of 60, along with anywhere from 40 to 70 passengers. Roughly 500 pounds of meat and poultry were brought aboard, along with approximately 900 eggs and 40 gallons of milk, among other supplies. Even though the average Zeppelin voyage only lasted 3 days, extra food was carried in case of delays due to storms and other dangerous weather conditions. No breakfast menus existed for the Hindenburg trips, as voyagers now dined on ubiquitous continental-style breakfast, a spread of pastries, eggs, meats, and fruits. As both German and American passengers flew on the ship, breakfast eggs could be prepared 2 ways: soft-boiled in the shell for the Germans, scrambled or fried eggs for the Americans. Bread was baked freshly every day. Lunch and dinner had proper menus, so we know exactly what the passengers ate. Travelers on the airship were well-heeled, well-traveled individuals, often sports or film stars or leaders in their increasingly powerful Nazi government. As such, they dine on a glamorous mix of French, German, and English cuisine. Lunch was always a first course of soup or salad. Different types of consommé were especially popular, followed by some kind of roast meat with a couple of vegetable sides, a tart or cake, and coffee. On this ill-fated last day of the trip, lunch was English-style roast beef with turnips, stuffed tomatoes with roasted potatoes, with a French-style pudding for dessert. In 1936, the Hindenburg inaugurated commercial air service across the North Atlantic by carrying over 1,000 passengers in 10 scheduled round trips between Germany and the United States. Though it was designed to be filled with helium, the airship was filled with highly flammable hydrogen instead. This was due to the fact that the U.S. held a monopoly on helium reserves and had restricted export of that element to Nazi Germany. The airships were designed to accommodate hundreds of passengers who can enjoy onboard facilities such as a bar, dining areas, and even a smoking lounge. The Hindenburg could also accommodate postal and telegraph services. In order to meet the ship's weight requirement, all of the furnishings were made as light as possible. Even the cabin beds were made out of aluminum. A light baby grand piano had been created for the vessel, although it was not on board during its last voyage. A ticket in 1936 cost $400, and in 1937 it was $450. In today's dollars, a double room would cost you over $8,000, and a single would cost you over $13,000. May 6, 1937. As darkness fell on May 6, buses took the 50 passengers and about a ton of baggage to the vast Zeppelin hangar. 50 pounds of baggage could be carried on for free. Access weight would cost 75 cents a pound, or $13 in today's dollars. After you pass through customs and passport control, you are warned against carrying matches on board. As customers board the airship by a retractable stairway, a band played as hundreds of people gathered around the ship, shouting their farewells. About 8:15, about 200 men grabbed the cables and briskly walked the aircraft. Once out of the hangar, if the captain wanted to moor the ship due to weather, the airship is attached to a movable mooring mast out into the field. At the appropriate time, the captain instructs the ground crew to release the airship. Little did they know, it would be their last journey. Once the airship is released, the ship cruises up to an altitude of 600 feet with a speed of approximately 75 miles an hour. On the 63rd flight, the ship left the Frankfurt airfield at 7:16 p.m. It flew over Cologne before crossing the Netherlands, the English Channel, and out over the Atlantic before reaching the United States. The airship takes the passengers across the Atlantic in 2.5 days, half the time a luxury liner would take. In this next footage, you will witness and see the destruction of war that was put upon Europe. You'll see the ravages of war that Europe was engulfed with. Churches, homes, neighborhoods destroyed, leveled to the ground. Here we see a crew member in awe, looking at all the devastation. Sitting amongst the carnage is the Rhine River. In part of the voyage, you would see ice floes and icebergs. While customers are looking at the icebergs, one of the customers is reminded about her voyage on the Titanic. Smoking is only allowed in the smoking area. The maitre d' is the only one that's allowed to have a lighter. Two and a half days after crossing the Atlantic, and about 700 miles away from the United States, communication to the captain is made.
Would appreciate weather reports for vicinity of 40 degrees 12 northwest, 60 degrees 53 west, 720 miles east of New York.
Little did they know, for some of them, it would be their last voyage.
Showers west, winds moving to the northwest. We wish you a good journey and good luck. Over.
After 2 days of flying over the Atlantic, at 5:40 in the morning, the captain notices and sees land and says to his crew, "Land! Land!" As you looked up into the sky, many people from the countryside came together, and as they looked up into the sky, one of the largest airships ever made floated in under its own power into the United States. Except for the strong headwinds that slowed its progress, the Atlantic crossing of the Hindenburg was otherwise unremarkable until the airship attempted an early landing at Lakehurst 3 days later on May 6th.
Thank you, Jack. It's a beautiful morning down here, and it's the day of the greatest aerial adventure in history. Crowds are gathering here at Lakehurst, New York.
Although carrying only half its full capacity of passengers, 36 out of 70, and the crewmen of 61, which 21 of the crewmen were trainees, during the flight accident, the Hindenburg was fully booked for its return flight. Many of the passengers with tickets to Germany were planning to attend the coronation of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth in London the following week. The airship hours were behind schedule when it passed over Boston on the morning of May 6th, and its landing at Lakehurst was expected to be further delayed because of the afternoon thunderstorms. Advised of poor weather conditions at Lakehurst, Captain Max Pruitz charted a course over Manhattan Island. Causing a public spectacle, people ran to the streets to look high above the skies of New York City to see this gigantic engineering marvel. At an altitude of 650 feet, the Hindenburg made its final approach to the Lakehurst Naval Air Station. Claims it was as big as the Titanic and the prize of Nazi Germany. Let's listen as Herbert Morrison heroically describes this last tragic event.
We're going to have a mighty fine description of it for you, because the men will have a difficulty in keeping footing in the sand, and especially since it's wet. Now, the structure is light and yet so strong in the Hindenburg. From the ground, as the ship passed us, we could see the passenger quarters. They're located just about a third of the distance back of the nose and just about a third of the distance from the keel. They're sort of square in shape and seem to extend the entire width of the ship. There are two decks, A and B, A being the main one and the one where most of the passengers assemble during the passage. Lining the sides of the deck are the observation windows. Now, they're slanted so that it will give anyone in the interior a fine view downward. And no doubt, as the ship went over a number of times, the people were looking down at the great mass of humanity assembled here in the field. Thousands of people have come out to witness the landing of this great airship. Now, there's a long, wide counter inside the observation section of the ship, and you can look down to the ground below, leaning on a table. And below the table, you see a relief map of the various air routes of the world. So as you travel along in the Hindenburg, you can watch the progress shown up on this map. Deck A is the upper of the two decks, and to get to Deck B, it's necessary for you to walk through a foyer and down a pair of stairs. There you find what is really a combined smoking room and lounge. Passengers are always thrilled when Captain Max Pruitz or Captain Ernst Lehmann will take you a trip through the giant airship. Through its many sections, up and down along the aluminum alloy girders, over the catwalks which lead from one area to another, and then you see a maze of bright metal girders everywhere. And after a walk through the ship, you're ready to rest, where you've covered a great amount of space, and you realize that you have traveled a great distance. Now they're coming in to make a landing of the Zeppelin. I'm going to step out here and cover it from the outside, so as I move out, we'll just stand by a second. Well, here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. We're out now outside of the hangar, and what a great sight it is. A thrilling one. It's a marvelous sight. It's coming down out of the sky, pointed directly towards us and toward the mooring mast. The mighty diesel motors just roared, their propellers biting into the air and throwing it back into a gale-like whirlpool. No wonder this great floating palace can travel through the air at such a speed with these powerful motors behind it. The sun is striking the windows of the observation deck on the eastward side and sparkling like glittering jewels on a background of black velvet. And every now and then the propellers are caught in the rays of the sun, and their highly polished surfaces reflect circles of gold. Now, a field that we thought active when we first arrived has turned into a moving mass of cooperative action. The landing crews have rushed to the posts and spots, and orders are being passed along, and last-minute preparations are being completed for the moment we have waited for so long. The ship is riding majestically toward us like some great feather, riding as though it was mighty proud of the place it's playing in the world's aviation. The ship is no doubt bustling with activity, as we can see. Orders are shouted to the crew. The passengers are probably lining the windows, looking down at the field ahead of them, getting their glimpse of the mooring mast. And these giant flagships standing here, the American airline flagships, waiting to race them to all points in the United States when they get the ship moored. There are a number of important personages on board, and no doubt the new commander, Captain Max Pruitz, is thrilled, too, for this is his great moment, the first time he's commanded the Hindenburg, for in previous flights he acted as a chief officer under Captain Lehmann. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship and has been taken a hold of down on the field by a number of men. It's starting to rain again. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It bursts into flame. It bursts into flame and it's falling. It's crashing. Watch it, folks. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Get this, Charlie. It's flying and it's crashing. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my. Get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between it. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's the place is 400 or 500 feet into the sky. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the frame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast. Oh, the humanity and all the players are just screaming around here. I can't talk to people. His friends are on there. I can't talk, ladies and gentlemen. Honest, it's just laying there, a mass of smoking wreckage. And everybody can't hardly breathe and talk and screaming. Lady, I'm sorry. Honestly, I can hardly breathe. I'm going to step inside where I cannot see it. Charlie, that's terrible. Listen, folks, I'm going to have to stop for a minute because I've lost my voice. This is the worst thing I've ever witnessed.
There was a total of 13 deaths out of the 36 passengers on the airship. 22 of the 61 crew died. Most of the survivors were severely burned. This also included one ground crewman that had died, a civilian linesman. 10 passengers and 16 crewmen died in the crash or in the fire. The majority of the victims were burnt to death, while others died jumping out of the airship because of the excessive height, or as a consequence of either smoke insulation or falling debris. 6 crew members, 3 passengers, and Alan Hageman died in the following hours or days, mostly the result of the burns. There were many theories that caused this terrible accident. If you'd like to know more what happened to the Hindenburg and hear some of the theories, click up above on the right-hand corner and it'll take you there. If you don't see it now, you'll see it later. Well, thanks for stopping by and thanks for seeing my historical documentary on the Hindenburg. Come back and see me again. I'll have more historical events here in the near future.